Imagine this. It's 1587. 117 English men, women, and children land on Roanoke Island, off the coast of modern-day North Carolina. They're filled with hope, dreaming of a new life in a new world. They build a settlement, plant crops, and the first English child in the Americas, Virginia Dare, is born. But their leader, John White, has to sail back to England for crucial supplies. He promises to return within months. He bids farewell to his daughter, his granddaughter Virginia, and the entire colony. But his return is delayed, catastrophically delayed by a war between England and Spain. For 3 long years, White is trapped, unable to get a ship back to his family. When he finally lands on Roanoke Island in August 1590, on his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, he finds nothing. The settlement is gone. The houses have been dismantled. All 117 people have vanished without a trace. There are no signs of a struggle, no bodies, no graves. Just silence. The only clue is a single word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. Another carving, CRO, is found on a nearby tree. This wasn't just a group of people disappearing. It was the complete erasure of an entire English colony. It became America's first, and perhaps most haunting, unsolved mystery. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? For over 400 years, this question has captivated historians, archaeologists, and storytellers. Today, we're going to dive deep into the evidence, explore the most compelling theories, and try to piece together the fate of those first settlers. Before we unpack the clues, let's set the stage. The 1580s were a time of intense rivalry. England, under Queen Elizabeth I, was desperate to challenge Spain's dominance in the New World. Sir Walter Raleigh, a dashing courtier and explorer, sponsored the Roanoke expeditions not just for glory, but for a strategic foothold, a base for privateering against Spanish treasure fleets. This 1587 colony, led by John White, was actually the second attempt at settling Roanoke. The first, a military-focused venture in 1585, ended in failure. Those soldiers had a terrible relationship with the local Native American tribes, like the Secotans and CROATOAN, creating a legacy of mistrust and violence that the new colonists would inherit. So when White's group arrived, they were already on shaky ground. They had intended to settle further north, in the Chesapeake Bay, but their pilot, Simon Fernandez, controversially forced them to disembark at Roanoke. Tensions were high from the start. Now, let's get back to that cryptic carving, CROATOAN. This was not some random word. CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island, now known as Hatteras Island, and it was also the name of the friendly Native American tribe that lived there, led by a chief named Manteo. Manteo had actually traveled to England and was an ally to the colonists. Before John White left, he had arranged a secret signal with the colonists. If they had to leave Roanoke, they were to carve their destination into a tree. And if they were in distress, they were to add a Maltese cross above the carving. When White found the CROATOAN message, there was no cross. This suggested they hadn't been attacked, but had moved voluntarily. It was a sign of hope. So, the most prominent theory is that the colonists simply packed up and went to live with the CROATOAN people. They were running low on supplies. Their return ship was long overdue, and joining a friendly, established community would have been their best chance for survival. It makes perfect sense. The colonists were starving, and the CROATOAN were skilled farmers and fishers who knew the land. Over the centuries, tantalizing clues have supported this assimilation theory. Later explorers and settlers in North Carolina reported hearing stories from native tribes about people with gray eyes who could read books, traits associated with Europeans. Some members of the Lumbee tribe, who now live in the region, have long claimed ancestry from the Roanoke colonists, citing oral traditions and English surnames that have been passed down for generations. In recent years, archaeology has added new weight to this idea. At a site on Hatteras Island, the original CROATOAN, Archaeologists from the First Colony Foundation have unearthed a trove of late 16th century English artifacts mixed in with Native American pottery. They've found things like a sword hilt, parts of a flintlock musket, and bits of English pottery, all from the right time period. This survivor camp suggests a small group of colonists, at the very least, made their way to the island and lived alongside the CROATOAN people. It's powerful evidence that they didn't just vanish into thin air, they integrated. But if that's the case, why didn't John White go to Croatoan Island to find them? He tried. A massive storm was brewing, and his crew, fearing the treacherous waters of the Outer Banks, refused to risk the journey. They were on a tight schedule with their privateering mission and forced the ship to turn back. Heartbroken, John White sailed away, never to see his family again. He died in Ireland, never knowing their fate for certain. Of course, assimilation isn't the only theory. Another darker possibility is that the colony was wiped out. But by whom? One candidate is the Spanish. They saw the English colony as a threat to their shipping lanes and had a history of destroying rival settlements. However, there's no Spanish record of an attack on Roanoke, and you'd think they would have boasted about such a victory. Furthermore, the lack of bodies or signs of a battle makes a direct, overwhelming assault unlikely. A more plausible and tragic theory is that they were attacked by other, less friendly Native American tribes. Remember that first failed colony? They had made powerful enemies. Powhatan, the powerful chief who would later encounter the Jamestown settlers, may have seen the Roanoke colonists as intruders in his sphere of influence. Some historical accounts from the Jamestown colony suggest that Powhatan himself admitted to wiping out a group of white people who had been living with a nearby tribe, fearing they would join forces against him. This theory suggests the colonists might have split up. Perhaps some went to Croatoan, while another group tried to move inland, closer to their originally planned destination at the Chesapeake Bay. This is where the Dare stones come into play. In the 1930s, a series of stones were found, supposedly inscribed by Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter. They told a tragic story of the colonists moving inland, suffering from disease and attacks, until only a few survivors remained. For a while, they were considered a breakthrough. Unfortunately, all but the first stone were later proven to be elaborate fakes, casting doubt on the entire collection. However, archaeologists have found another intriguing site inland, known as Site X. Here, they've discovered more English pottery from the right period, suggesting a small group of colonists may have moved about 50 miles west of Roanoke. Perhaps the colony didn't just go to one place. Maybe they broke into smaller groups to increase their chances of survival. Some went south to Croatoan, some went west, inland. So what do I think happened? Looking at all the evidence, the idea of a single, catastrophic event seems less likely than a more complex story of survival and adaptation. The evidence for assimilation with the Croatoan people on Hatteras Island is the strongest we have. The lack of a distress signal, the Croatoan carving, the archaeological finds, and the oral traditions all point to a deliberate relocation. It's very likely that at least a significant portion of the colony integrated with their native allies, their English identity slowly fading over generations as they became part of a new community. Perhaps other smaller groups broke off and met different fates. Some might have perished from disease or conflict, while others tried to make it on their own inland. The lost colony may not have been lost at all, but rather transformed. They didn't vanish. They assimilated, their story becoming woven into the fabric of the native peoples of the North Carolina coast. The story of Roanoke is a powerful reminder of how fragile life was in the early days of American colonization, and it's a compelling human drama of survival against all odds. It's a mystery that endures not because there are no clues, but because the clues point in so many different directions, painting a picture that is both tragic and hopeful. The colonists of Roanoke may have disappeared from English history, but their legacy and their DNA might just live on in the people of North Carolina today. What do you think happened to them? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this journey into America's oldest mystery. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest enigmas. See you next time.